As Saylor says, and I think he's right, the approval of the ETFs was an enormous thing because for traditional financial people, for traditional fund managers, it removed what, in their mind, I think, in many cases, was the largest risk associated with Bitcoin, which is to say, the government hates it. Yeah, that's great. It's all cool, but the government hates it. And they're going to shut this thing down. And I don't think the risk of a 6102 in the next year or two is that high. I think over time, everyone should start into the journey of getting into Bitcoin. And then once you begin to recognize these risks, you pretty quickly get to where I am, which is that you got to self-custody it. You don't want somebody else to hold it. Because if it's, as we all say, not your keys, not your coins.
Matthew Hoogan's prediction in October that spot Bitcoin ETFs will attract $55 billion in assets within 5 years has almost come true, with 10 new funds approved by US authorities totaling more than $52 billion in assets. Hoogan admits to underestimating the potential of Bitcoin ETFs, foreseeing that the industry will be worth hundreds of billions of dollars. This amazing development demonstrates the growing understanding of Bitcoin's value, as expressed by Lawrence Lepard, a seasoned financial expert. In an interview with podcaster Brandon Gentile, Lepard discussed Bitcoin's potential, condemning the influence of shitcoins, but supporting Satoshi Nakamoto's answer to the faulty financial system. Lepard's remarks emphasize the significance of Bitcoin ETF certification and the importance of mainstream adoption, which is quickly becoming a reality. Lawrence Lepard acknowledged that this step gives fund managers regulatory clarity, allowing them to invest in Bitcoin without fear of government intervention. Lepard also suggested that the government may have approved ETFs to keep Bitcoin investments under control, making them easier to tax and monitor. Watch clips from the interview for further insights into Lawrence Lepard's interview. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more content. Enjoy the video.
As Saylor says, and I think he's right, the approval of the ETFs was an enormous thing because for traditional financial people, for traditional fund managers, it removed what, in their mind, I think, in many cases, was the largest risk associated with Bitcoin, which is to say, the government hates it. Yeah, that's great. It's all cool, but the government hates it. And they're going to shut this thing down. And we can't, how can I buy something I know the government's going to shut down? Well, guess what? They didn't. And I have to say, honestly, I was very pleasantly surprised. I thought the ETFs were going to get delayed, not approved, et cetera. And I think what it maybe shows you is the power of a BlackRock and, all their money and all their lobbying. I mean, they realized they could make money on it and they pushed it through somehow. So here we are, we've got them. That's great. And that provides some regulatory clarity to a lot of fund managers, to a lot of people who are kind of like, well, look, if the government hated it, why did they let the ETFs get created? And so to me, that's a real big change. And of course, we've seen the response in the price and the flows. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so I think in the short run, there's really, and the other thing is keep in mind that what it does is it allows them to also have it within their box or within their system. And so there may have been, they may have been game theorying it and thinking, okay, all these people are buying it and self-custodying it, which Elizabeth Warren hates. And we can't see it when it's on somebody's Trezor. We don't know who the hell has what. I mean, we can KYC it and see where it came from, but as you know, it's kind of hard to keep track. And if we approve the ETF, at least we'll be able to see it and tax it. So better inside the fence than outside the fence. And so they, if you're being real conspiratorial, they think, well, let's get all these guys inside the fence, so at least we can see them. But I certainly don't think they're going to flip flop anytime soon and go negative on Bitcoin. I think Elizabeth Warren, she wants to prevent all self-custody. I don't think she'll succeed at that. She might succeed, though, at causing all of us to have to report what we own. As you'll recall, we had to check a box on our taxes that said we've been dealing in crypto. Yeah. And it strikes me that this is very similar to when they made us report our Swiss bank accounts, that, they don't want people dodging taxes. So if you own it, they want you to report it. So I could actually see them doing some law like that. But so let's talk longer term, though, about 6102. I don't think today, it's going up, it's working, it's a good investment, et cetera, but it doesn't appear to most of them today to be an existential threat. I mean, you and I both know it is an existential threat and that eventually it's going to eat the entire fiat world and we're going to be denominating our lives in sats. Okay, we know that, but they don't know that yet. But they're going to learn that as they watch the prices go up. On the 6102, I think it's a very low probability in the next year or two because I think they've approved it and they're not going to, they couldn't flip on a dime like that. I think it becomes a higher probability when things are really falling apart. And this is the leading canary in the coal mine, right? I mean, gold, they've managed to suppress that. So if this thing is going to the moon, that's going to be scary for fiat people. And they, when people are scared, backed into a corner, they do crazy stuff. So we'll have to see. And, I don't argue against people who don't want to take the time to self-custody. Well, I think everybody should self-custody. Okay, that's, point one.
Mm-hmm.
But, I look at, 80-year-olds who don't necessarily understand the technology, don't want to take the time to learn the technology, but they want to be exposed. Fine. If they want to buy the ETF, that's fine. I mean, I don't think, I don't think the risk of a 6102 in the next year or two is that high. I think over time, everyone should start into the journey of getting into Bitcoin. And then once you begin to recognize these risks, you pretty quickly get to where I am, which is that you got to self-custody it. You don't want somebody else to hold it. Because if it's, as we all say, not your keys, not your coins. And yeah, it would be, if they did 6102, it would be simple. Call up Coinbase, call up Fidelity, call up every major ETF provider and say, sorry guys, the laws have changed. We need to defend the US dollar. Our currency is failing. Everybody who's in Bitcoin, cash them out at this new price and send them the cash and, send those coins you own, just, give them to us kind of thing. And that's a possibility.
Lawrence Lepard expressed resentment and unhappiness about the impact of certain individuals and cryptocurrencies on space, claiming they hindered progress greatly. He pointed out that Bitcoin differs from other cryptocurrencies. According to him, the US dollar has been quite stable historically, but its purchasing power has declined since leaving the gold standard. Lawrence Lepard blamed the decline on mismanagement and the country's dependence on being the world's reserve currency. Lepard criticized the financial system for favoring the wealthy, allowing them to accumulate large fortunes at the expense of others. He applauded Satoshi Nakamoto for using Bitcoin to solve this problem and encouraged individuals who recognize its value to spread the word, accelerating the transition to a better future. Let's go back to the interview and watch more clips to gain insights from Lawrence Lepard.
I get all this. I get all the FUD, and I also get, I think to me, it's tragic. It created a great opportunity for some really smart people to buy at 15,000, but I think it's tragic what Sam Bankman-Fried and all the shitcoins did to the space. I think they really set us back quite a bit because, I have a lot of smart friends who are like, I'm not getting involved with that. There's a bunch of frauds in that area, and
yes.
I get it. If you're just looking at it cursorily, I get it. Yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried was a master fraud. We all knew it. We were telling him. We were writing letters to the SEC saying, "You're going to investigate this guy. This is bad shit." And as we all know, Bitcoin's not a shit coin. It's completely different than all those other coins. To somebody who's lazy or just hasn't taken the time to do the work, they could easily conclude that this is just another one of those. The U.S. has been an incredibly stable currency for a reasonably long period of time. Okay, we had hyperinflation in when the country was formed, when the Continental was overprinted.
Yes.
And by the way, that's why the Constitution got written, saying that only gold and silver could be money. And of course, we violated that, but that's a different story. Yeah. The other thing we did is we had huge inflation in the Civil War when Lincoln printed greenbacks and effectively kind of inflated the money supply and so forth. But other than that, it's been a pretty stable place because, as it's interesting to me, and I'm sure you've seen this too. When we go to these shows, people from other countries tend to get it more than Americans get it. And that's because if you lived in Brazil or you lived in Argentina or you lived in Hungary or you lived in Israel or you lived in a lot of other countries that were not the reserve currency, you've had high inflation, sometimes hyperinflation, Venezuela, and you recognize that currencies die. They're not always sound. The U.S. happens to be, until 71, a reasonably well-managed currency that didn't die. And since 71, it's been mismanaged, but because it was the world reserve currency and a lot of history behind it, we had all the guns and everything else, it's the death process has taken some time, but it is dying. In terms of raw purchasing power, the dollar's lost 97% of its value since we went off the gold standard in 71. And that last 3% is just, we're hanging on by a thread. That 3% is going to go to zero. So, so I think it's kind of a recency bias, and the MMTers and Keynes, they got sold on the notion that growth is good and that bigger numbers are good. And let's face it, it is an actual natural human, psychology philosophy to want to see number go up. We're not playing a fair game. We're playing a very unfair game, which is why, the average working stiff in this country, has to pay 20% on their credit card or something close to that, and yet Wall Street can borrow at the Fed funds rate, which now is 5.25%, but used to be 0. That's just an enormous advantage. You give me that deal, and I'd become rich. It'd be simple. You borrow at 0 and buy 10% yielding securities, and then do it again and lever it up. No mystery. This is how you've got all these people who've made, private equity people, Wall Street people, financial players who do nothing but shuffle paper, who've managed to create millions and millions and millions of dollars of wealth for themselves, at the expense of the rest of us, right? So it's quite problematic. But the beautiful thing is Satoshi saw it, solved this problem, and it's going to make all of our lives a lot better. And all we have to do is really sit back and watch it unfold. To the degree that we want to participate and make it go faster, as Saylor said in his speech at Bitcoin Atlantis, I highly recommend people to listen to that speech. I think it's one of his best ones. It's incumbent, ask not what Bitcoin can do for you, ask what you can do for Bitcoin. It's the job of those of us who understand it to communicate that to everybody who doesn't understand it. For a number of reasons. One, because they save themselves and help them out, but two, because it'll just push this transition along more quickly. And this transition is what will make the world a much better place on the other side.
Lawrence Lepard noted that licensing Bitcoin ETFs was a huge deal, especially for traditional financial people and fund managers, because it eliminated the most significant risk connected with Bitcoin, which was the concern that the government would shut it down. He was surprised by the approval, fearing it would be delayed or refused. Lepard ascribed the acceptance to the influence of strong financial organizations, such as BlackRock, which stood to profit from it. However, the path to mainstream acceptance is not without challenges. Bitcoin's volatility and speculative nature have raised concerns about its adoption as a mainstream asset, with some market participants comparing it to art or fine wine, rather than traditional assets such as gold and commodities. Despite these worries, Morgan Stanley hit an important achievement in August by allowing its 15,000-strong network of financial advisors to actively advocate at least 2 of the new Bitcoin ETFs to their clients. This move marks a turning point, with industry experts stating that understanding these products is now critical, and the risk lies in not moving forward. Retail investors have dominated flows into new ETFs, with only a few large institutions and hedge funds declaring their positions in regulatory filings. The next step is to draw in others unfamiliar with Bitcoin, with CF Benchmark CEO Sui Chung pointing out that the initial $50 billion came from people who understand it well. However, the fact that first movers like Morgan Stanley are receiving so much attention demonstrates how far crypto ETFs must travel to become a part of the investment mainstream. As attorney Andrew Lom points out, the true test of whether these ETFs can gain mainstream acceptance will be their liquidity, not their size. Only when they enter the usual investable universe will investors contemplate allocating to Bitcoin, indicating a major change in its acceptance. As we conclude, do you think the approval of Bitcoin ETFs will lead to increased mainstream adoption and investment in Bitcoin? Or will it lead to increased regulation and control over the cryptocurrency space? Please drop your thoughts in the comments below, share this video, and hit your thumbs on the like button. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.